The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
On this episode of the Alldus podcast, we have got Howard Shortt from Grant Thornton and joins us to discuss AI and cyber and the new world of cyber threats and whether we've entered a new dawn in cyber risk. We'll explore how today's threats are evolving, what's changing for businesses, and what leaders need to rethink in their approach of security. Howard, thanks very much for joining us on today's podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark. This is great.
Give us a brief overview about your background in the world of tech consulting.
How did I get here?
Yeah, how did you get here?
I didn't take a traditional approach, Mark, right? So I finished school and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Took a year off, made sausages in Super Queen, swept the floor in Dunnes Stores, stacked shelves because I wasn't sure. Eventually determined I needed to do something in computer engineering. Did a PLC, studied how to write programs in Turbo Pascal, sold the program, maintained it for a couple of years. And then I moved into a small Irish company that was doing software sales, network engineering and support. And I stayed there for a couple of years and I kind of crafted my trade a bit from there. But I didn't take a formal education in computer science until I was in my 30s. Right? Then I went into Trinity College and I did an honours degree in business information systems. Then I said, okay, let me go a little bit further. And I did a master's degree in computer forensics and digital investigations. And what that opened for me was just phenomenal. At the time I was working in IBM with one of my close colleagues, Jason Guy, and the pair of us ran the outsourcing operation from a security perspective for Global Business Solutions in IBM. And it was just fantastic. I absolutely loved it. So now I find myself spending more time in education and academia, but I absolutely love incident response, computer forensics, finding out what happened, piecing it together, expert witness and those kind of behavioural responses that we need to be able to present in a legally defensive manner into court if necessary.
That's so interesting, your background, because I worked in Brown Thomas I was working through college, and then I worked in Aldi briefly as in kind of area manager program. You learn so much in those type of roles. And it's so bloody hard as well, because you're always on your feet. There's no letting up. And it's kind of like you can never hide, right?
No, you can't.
So when I got into the world of kind of tech, I was thinking, man, this is so easy.
Oh boy.
What I was doing.
All right, that must have been a shock to your system when you study a bit more and find out,
yeah,
tech is actually quite difficult,
yeah.
Right? And I think it takes a particular mindset. Like I was talking to John earlier, and we were describing kind of where we got our passions from, right? So where did we get started? What was the creative spark behind getting into technology? And for me, it was my dad, right? So he was always inquisitive about what technology could do. One of the earliest computing devices we had was a Casio 1 kilobit data bank that could take basic programming prompts and little tiny executable programs, and it could run like gaming simulators across an LED output that had only numerical representation.
Yeah.
So the kind of things that we were doing at the time was I figured out that I could set up a tiny little game using the 0 to 9 array of numbers and just had them randomized on the screen. Then I'd use control buttons on the tiny little QWERTY keyboard to be able to put the numbers into the right order. And all it would do is it would track the amount of time it took to do that. Yeah. And that was my first start in learning how to do computer programming to solve a particular problem.
Yeah.
The problem was I want to be entertained by this thing. I'm going to find a way to make that happen. So I loved it. And that's kind of my creative part of getting into it. But you have to have a passion.
Yeah. And
for me, when I finished school, I wasn't sure. Right? I wasn't committed. I didn't know, because I was very good at engineering. I was terrible at mathematics, although I studied hard at it to become better. And I just found computer science to be an area of real interest because I'd been using them since I was a kid anyway. Yeah. So a lot of it just came naturally. So when I formalized that study, Mark, what I found was the study, I know Trinity College program directors would hate me for saying, I didn't find it difficult. Similarly, when I went in and did my master's in computer forensics, I didn't find it difficult because I love it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that just, I find it just motivates me.
Gives you
I want to
energy.
know more. I get energy from doing
Energized
these
from it,
things,
yeah.
right? And I just love being able to go through the process of the logical reasoning. It all comes down to a 1 or a 0, and if I can infer what that bit was at that time,
Yeah.
then I can be adamantly sure that's what happened.
Yeah.
And being able to put that together and then detail it into a report that kind of demonstrates to the stakeholders or to a legal firm that's going through a litigation phase or an expert witness in a criminal case, anything like that.
Yeah.
Being able to articulate that back with confidence
Yeah.
is where
And
it comes
professional services is great for that because you have to continuously learn.
from. You constantly
You have to be energized to want to do that type of role. There's no hiding.
Nope.
And you're trying to manage all these different areas.
Yep.
How important was that in developing that hunger to continue to learn, be role model, but also learning from other people?
Sure.
What's kept you in the industry for this amount of time?
I think if I was to look back through all of the jobs that I've done, I feel I've always been a consultant. Right from the earliest days of making sausages in Super Quinn, when you had Fergal Quinn come in and tell us, the customer is king. Customer is king. So it was about that customer service representation, which in a way is the same as a consultant. You're there to help the clients to solve a problem. So me in customer service in retail, it's the very same thing. And that approach has always stayed with me. All of the jobs that I've ever worked in, I found myself either helping others to solve those same problems or to be demonstrating by example that here's the positive way that we can solve this problem.
Yeah.
So I feel I've always been a consultant. I had my first consulting opportunity in EY. I worked with Hugh Callahan, and the guy was amazing. Absolutely amazing. He was a personable fella. He operated ever so slightly out of the standard hierarchical practices that you traditionally would have seen with professional services firms. And he was just personable. And it made him a very likable character. He was somebody that mentored me and somebody whom I'd always have time for. But now I know them all, right? So I've worked in EY, I've worked in PwC, and I've worked in Grant Thornton. I know who the good people are, and I know who the people are that I wouldn't like to be working with again. But I meet good people, and I like good people, and I try to maintain those relationships where I can.
How do you, I suppose, help your customers talk about what's happening in the world, these kind of frontier AI models, in the world of cyber?
Sure.
And some people think it's kind of marketing spin, incredible marketing spin.
Yeah.
Some people think there's actually something in it.
Yeah.
And we're in this kind of brave new world. Where are we at?
Right. I know, Mark, that no matter what I say here now, somebody will take it out of context, right? And they'll twist it. But I think AI is a fantastic opportunity, right? I love it. I think I learn when I see it producing answers for me in the models that we use. I'm learning from that. And I'm like, okay, that's a new avenue for me to approach, or a new sphere of things that I can go and actually start to learn about. But similarly, you're dealing with threats that have become accelerated. But if you look at what cybersecurity has been over the last decade and a half, it's always worked on an element of fear, right? Fear motivates change. And when we think about what AI is doing, it's not changing it. It's just accelerating it. So now you can masquerade as a deep fake or a voice cloned or, perfect phishing examples, and they're very hard to detect. But the same threats can be used to our advantage in a defense.
Yeah.
So we're not quite in the world is going to implode on us. We have an opportunity to make it good. We have the defense and we have the attack.
Yeah.
We can improve both.
Do you think businesses in Ireland are prepared for this new wave of cyber threats?
No, I do not. I think we're getting better. I think we look at regulation and how it's changing what organizations are doing and how they think. But I think Ireland is, look, it's a terrible opinion to have, but I think we are an immature organization, Ireland Inc., when it comes to cybersecurity. We're getting better, but my God, it's an awful long journey to get there, right? And now, as we start to see improvements, and we look at things like the Network and Information Systems Directive 2, you've got organizations coming into scope of regulation that were never in scope before.
Yeah.
And they're entirely immature, and they need help. They need people who've done these things before, can set up an ISMS, can design a control suite that actually is relevant to their business, and that can help them to improve as they go. But I don't think you can become instantly compliant and secure, because oftentimes people think, oh, I'm compliant, therefore I'm secure. It's absolutely fake.
At Alldus, we're helping companies hire professionals in the field of cybersecurity and AI. on permanent and contract. And our differentiator is we're helping companies hire people that we really trust. And we build that trust through referrals. Over 85% of the people that we place into roles on contract or permanent are through referrals of people we know who recommend them. This is really important, particularly in the world of cyber, where you want to have professionals who are really good at their job, who are trusted, and they can come in and add value to your business. On contract, we've got some of the most niche skills available for people to hire, but also we're introducing virtual CISOs. CISOs that can come in and work in your business between 1, 2, 3, 4 days a month, if not a little bit more. If you're interested in finding out a little bit more about the services Alldus provide, please feel free to get in touch. Now back to the show. What do you think most organizations that are immature are underestimating?
I think the identity is absolutely the core of everything that we do in cybersecurity. I think it's the biggest threat vector that we have is identity and the proliferation of them, especially in an AI era. AI can very quickly detect where credentials are contained in spreadsheets or plain text files, API keys that haven't been properly encrypted, and it'll go and harvest those. And if we're not careful with how AI gets implemented, then the identity part of what we're doing becomes an attack vector that's going to be magnified.
Yeah. When we think about kind of most common mistakes that companies make when responding to modern cyber attacks, does anything kind of come to mind?
It does. I think preparation and lack of preparation is where organizations tend to fall down. We have a big focus on resilience, right? So resilience being a core element of DORA, which affects all of the financial services industry. But resilience is baked in, right? So we have to think about how do we become resilient when we look at the standard models of how we do incident response. And we think about preparation. That's where we build resilience, in preparation. We exercise resilience as we start to go through the phases of an incident response methodology, how we detect something, how we assess it, we contain, eradicate, recover. And that's how we prove that we're resilient. And then we improve resilience in the lessons learned phase so that we're better next time around.
Yeah.
And as we start to think like that, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And how do you kind of get leaders to get it without having to go through the pain of an incident?
Exercise. All of the regulations require senior leadership to have thorough understanding as to how cyber risks are qualified and quantified. And in some cases, they're personally liable to ensure that the correct strategies are implemented to mitigate against them.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're already motivated when they come asking for expertise and support. But otherwise, you run through what we would call an exercise, a desktop simulation, and you make people sweat. You say, right, this thing has happened, and you put them in an environment, and you say, well, what are you going to do? Yeah. And the common things that we'd find, Mark, is people fall down on effective communications. Quite simply, silence is chaos. You have to know who to communicate to, when to communicate, and the message that you need to state. And you can pre-prepare your legally vetted template so that you can go to public relations, you can go to social media, and you can tell people, yes, we've had an incident. Here's what we're doing about it. We're going to get on top of this. And as far as we know, we're going to protect your data. We're going to do what we have to do. But you have to get out in front of it, because if you don't, you're going to be dealing with the long tail of reputational impact.
So how do you, if you're a leader now, balance between investing in cybersecurity with the other pressures you have for growth, cost control? It's not straightforward.
No, it's not. And how we help leaders in responding to that. Look, I've been in many situations. I've been saying, right, what do I think about this product? Or I go to a vendor presentation and I get to evaluate certain bits of technology. There's 4 things I will ask myself before I invest in anything. Does this thing solve a problem? Is it a problem I have? Is it worth my time and my resources to invest in this product? And what new risks am I going to face when I do it? And if I can answer all of those things in a way that makes sense for my business or the leaders that I'm supporting, their business and their business strategies, then we give a thumbs up.
Yeah. How do you stay up to speed with everything that's going on at the moment? It feels like a tsunami of just updates, fire hose in the system. Yeah. I can only imagine then your customers are like,
Yeah, do you know, you never stop running in professional services, right? So you could be an industry cybersecurity expert who's focused on one product and maintaining that product through its life cycle for an organization. You could be working in a security operations center. You could be an analyst or an incident responder or an expert who actually gets in and does triage at the forensic level. That's a career in itself. But when you come into professional services, you always have to be thinking about what's next, what's going to happen next. So we look at regulation, regulatory change. That's one of the biggest drivers of how professional services are sustained. But we also have incidents, we have impact, we have organizations that want to be better and they want to mature. They need help, they need leadership, they need guidance, they need training, all of that kind of experience. Oftentimes they need a level of expertise in integrating solutions because clients, if they're busy doing what their business strategy says they should do, they don't have the time to go research this stuff. They don't know if the vendor is going to come in with an all-encompassing solution or if it's only going to get them 50% of the direction they need to go in. So we can help them to integrate it and maximize it. So there's a reliance and there's a need on professional services and consultancy expertise for those reasons.
Do the basics ever get old?
No, they never do. And we look across enterprise IT and you look across operational technology environments, the basics never change, right? It's know what you have. Like when we talk about enterprise IT, you got to know what you have. You got to know the value that it's worth, and you got to protect it to that value. And the only slight change when you look in operational technology environments is you got to know what you have, you got to know its value, you got to segregate it, and you got to protect it to the value that it's worth. So we make slight nuance changes, and then we look at the frameworks as they evolve, right? So the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework is one of the most common frameworks that is used globally for cybersecurity maturity. You can go through an assessment and it will tell you, broadly speaking, you're good in these areas, but you can improve in these areas. And then you can measure yourself against your peer organizations if you want to do that, and professional services does that really well. But these things are all driven towards helping you to mature over time. You don't start mature. And if you think you do, you're going to be immature tomorrow.
When you offer advice to the next generation coming through, and they want to get into this field, maybe they actually want to cross-train. They're a seasoned analyst and they want to kind of get into this field, but don't necessarily know where to start. And they're good at problem solving, trustable. What kind of advice would you offer, particularly if they're a little bit overwhelmed and they don't know, what do I do?
Okay. There's a lot of courses, there's a lot of training you can take, there's a lot of academic and professional services qualifications you can go and have. I think you got to start small, right? Look at something that you're passionate about. If it's an operating system, because I got my passion from dealing with Microsoft products, right? And now it's evolved and it encompasses all flavors of Unix. And you mentioned how do we keep up with threats? We had a massive threat just announced and disclosed yesterday in Linux systems. And it's globally impactful. But I wouldn't like to set a fear or a panic. There's oftentimes layers of defense that we deal with. And we want youngsters coming in and learning about this organization and how we structure it to be comfortable that just because you have something that is absolutely roaring red on the outside of a network, the fire is coming, you've got enough protection mechanisms typically around an enterprise that can reduce that risk as you start to come to the inside of the network. But it's the inside of the network that's most critical, in my opinion, today. And it's the insider threat that we're faced with, or it's the coercion of employees on the inside by external parties because they simply know they can't get in from the external. Right? So they leverage what they can to get to the inside of the network as quickly as possible.
Because if you're a leader at the moment, you could be just dragged over here, you could be dragged over here, but being excellent at the basics feels like such an important thing to be doing at this moment in time. And then the next generation of people who are coming in who are hungry to learn, and then you trying to role model those basics to show people this is the expectations.
Well, we look at that, Mark, right? There's so many avenues. Like, I think maybe 20 years ago, people who worked with technology as I have and my peers have, we could genuinely call ourselves experts. We knew this stuff inside and out. But now you've got rapid deployment of new programming languages, you've got newer technologies, you've got split functions, you've got all kinds of modern architecture that are totally different to how we used to do these things in the past. But the basic fundamentals never change. So anybody who wants to study today, I say start with the basic fundamentals. Learn what an asset register should be. Learn what it means when something goes wrong in your asset register and the kind of life cycle impact that can have. learn about devices that you can't detect.
Yeah.
Right? And there's ways of mastering your technology and your knowledge. We considered TCP/IP to be to the benefit of mankind when it became widely available, but we can predate that with other communications protocols that were in use, IPX and SPX and LLMs when we were with NetWare. Now we've modernized and we're using TCP/IP, and it's got limitations in how many addresses that we have, so we've tried to modernize again into TCP/IP6, and we're seeing how it's transforming how communications are conducted.
Yeah.
It's also changing how we can monitor and detect what's happening inside in those packets. Encryption is something we love as engineers because it's helping us to be assured that when I communicate with you, my message is encrypted. When you communicate with me, your message is encrypted, and nobody else can interfere with that.
Yeah.
But we have to understand how that encryption routine runs, what kind of ciphers that we're using. Are those ciphers today quantum resistant? Because that's coming at us as well. There's no stopping to learning, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Howard Shortt from Grant Thornton, a partner at Cybersecurity. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.